1.1 Properties of Real Numbers. This chart can be found on page 3 of your textbook. You probably ought to pause and copy this chart down. I do know that you have learned commutative, associative, distributive. The other three are probably new, but we will go over those in this video. So let's look at the first new property. Let's look at closure. Closure says that a set is closed under the specified operation if and only if performance of that operation on members of the set always produces a member of the set. Okay, a lot of words. So let's just ask the question, is the set of real numbers closed under addition? Is real numbers closed under addition? What that means is if I take a real number and I add another real number, will I always get a real number? Yes, I will. So the answer is yes, the real number set is always closed under addition. Let's look at another one. Irrational numbers closed under multiplication. So an irrational times another irrational, will that always give me an irrational? Well, let's look at square root of 2 times square root of 2. That equals 2. No, this is not an irrational number. So the set of irrationals is not closed under multiplication. Let's look at irrational and addition. So let's say we're going to take the square root of 2 and we're going to add negative square root of 2. That gives me 0. Well, 0 is not an irrational number, so we are not closed under addition. Let's look at the three that you probably already know. Commutative property talks about order. So the order doesn't matter. I can take A plus B and I can make that B plus A, or I can take A times B and make that B times A. That's commutative property. This one is commutative property of addition. This one is commutative property of multiplication. Associative. I can take A plus B plus C and regroup it to A plus B plus C. I can do the same thing with multiplication. A times B times C equals A times B times C. This is associative property of addition, multiplication. And last, you have distributive, which is not a property of addition or multiplication. Distributive just says that this A right here is multiplying by both the B and the C. So I'm going to distribute into here. So I'm going to get A times B plus A times C. Now, let's be careful. When we have a problem that is all multiplication, this is really 2 times 4 times x times y. I cannot distribute this 2 in here to the 2 to the 4, n to the x, n to the y. This does not equal 2 times 4 times 2 times x times 2 times y, which would end up being 32xy. This is not correct. It is just simply 8xy. So let's look at the identity property of addition. If I take any real number A, what do I add to it to get A? That would be 0. So 0 is called the additive identity element. What about multiplication? A times what will still give me A. A times 1 will give me A. So 1 is the multiplicative identity element. Let's look at the inverse property, the last property. For inverse of addition is adding the opposite, so it's taking A and adding the opposite of A, which gives me 0. So the opposite of A is called the additive inverse. Let's look at multiplication. The multiplying by the reciprocal is the inverse of multiplying. So I'm going to take A and I'm going to multiply by 1 over A. That's the inverse, and I get 1. So 1 over A is the multiplicative inverse. One thing you have to remember though, if 1 over A is the multiplicative inverse, A cannot be equal to 0 because we cannot divide by 0.